Greetings, friends. When you read history, you sometimes encounter phenomena which are not supposed to exist in our current paradigm. Things like dragons. When I was reading Tom Holland's book Millennium, which describes history around the turn of the new millennium about 1,000 years ago in Europe, there were sightings of dragons. Are we to dismiss this as superstition, or are we to take them at their word? I mean, maybe a bit of both. It's not like we are free of superstitions in our current age. We have plenty of superstitions of our own. And I've been thinking about the sort of spirit which lurks under the bridge. And this is something that I've talked with John Rasmus before. I'm wondering if there is some truth to the troll under the bridge. And I mean, obviously this is a folk tale that's being passed on over the centuries. But is there actually something there? I mean, it would appear that no one has ever seen a real troll, but is it something non-physical? Could there be a demonic presence under certain bridges, or in tunnels, in dark places? Of course, you have to be willing to think that these sorts of things are even possible, otherwise you'll just dismiss it as superstition. It does tend to go against the Enlightenment, rationalistic worldview where everything is material. There's not really supposed to be a soul, and if there's no soul, there's no spirit. I believe these demons, though, are not human souls. I believe they're whatever they are. They're not human, or they could be fallen angels. But these strange things do happen under bridges, and you can empirically demonstrate this. So even if you're a staunch believer in the Enlightenment, well, empiricism has provided much for us. But of course you can't rely on empiricism alone. It does tend to be your intuition at the end of the day. Certain strange things happen in life, and I have shown a bridge in a previous video. I was just using it for artistic reasons. That's under a highway overpass. I did record some very strange activity under there over a year ago, and there was a voice, a strange sound, strange voice. Strange light when I went under there with my video camera. I got it on camera. I mean, it's on John Rasmus's channel. Just about the idea of the thing under the bridge, some sort of obviously invisible spirit, a presence, not necessarily the troll, but the idea that an evil entity is going to, something about the fact that it's miserable, it seeks out miserable places, which is odd, because if you were an invisible force, wouldn't you go to somewhere better? Wouldn't you go somewhere really nice? Or maybe they're not actually seeking out miserable places. They've perhaps been chained to that piece of land. Or they go there because it suits their character, the darkness, and especially under a bridge, they can watch people come and go. I mean, not all bridges, not if it's like some random highway, elevated highway out in the countryside, then you might not really be much to watch if you're a spirit, but it's the idea of the troll. We think of the troll as something you don't want to meet because maybe he's not going to let you pass unless you give him something. So these invisible spirits that could lurk in these places, perhaps obviously they're not literally extorting people, but they could be making people feel a certain way, giving people a certain bad feeling, making people feel, putting strange thoughts into their head, putting strange emotions into their head. And this is what I want to get on, is that can the presence of the demon enter the human body, or I don't want to say the soul, but get wrapped up with a person's mind and their body? And I hope not, but it is possible. I mean, if you think of exorcisms, what do? They, in the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, they have priests who are trained to exorcise demons. And if you read the Bible, it's, in the New Testament, Jesus casts out a multitude of demons from a man who was, beside himself. When they cross a body of water, and then they help that man, and it actually describes the spirits going out of this troubled man and then into a flock of wild pigs who then run off the edge of a cliff and kill themselves. So there is, if you take, the Bible's not a scientific, empirical document, but if you take them at their word, then these sorts of stories have been around with us forever. But I'm just focusing on the thing in the shady place, in the dark place. That's kind of what I'm interested in here, is under the bridge. So I mentioned the first case of, now that bridge is far from where I live. I don't get to go past by there very much. It's obviously, it's a dank place. It's not very clean, but it's the acoustics are very interesting. It's a wide open space. There's art under there. It's in nature because it's in a valley. So it's a sort of place you would think a spirit would like to go. Like as in, it's not a wonderful place, but it's the perfect hangout. And there is a bridge closer to where I live. I don't want to, give any personal details about where I live, but there's plenty of these railway bridges in the city or even outside the city. The road has to go under the railway tracks, so there's a bit of you got to go down a hill and then up a hill. And it's nearby where I live, so I do often pass under this bridge. It's very dank, it's unpleasant. It's not as long as the bridge I described earlier, but it's at least 100 yards or more. It'll take you at least 30 seconds to 45 seconds to pass under it, or maybe longer, depending on how fast you're walking. And there's water dripping from the ceiling there, and and you don't want to be on the road there. There's potholes, and the way traffic drives in this neighborhood is just a very uncomfortable feeling to want to bike on the road there. So I usually take my bike on the sidewalk. And I've talked about this before. I don't want to go into too much detail, but occasionally in the city you run into someone who gets angry that you're biking on the sidewalk. This does not happen to me very often. When it does happen, it's almost always a white person. I don't know why white people have that certain entitlement. Some white people, they have that sense of get off the sidewalk, and it's like, well, but I'm not trying to annoy anyone. I'm often going very slowly. I'm not trying to breeze, blow by anyone, do anything dangerous. It's just you can conserve more energy without actually walking the bike. You can kind of just, to have to get off the bike, then it's like, oh man, you lost all of your kinetic energy. You let it all go away. Why, come on. It's the city here. I'm not doing anything crazy, but and I'm just telling you, under this bridge, I've had 2 encounters with people furious that I was biking, and last summer or 2 summers ago, this white lady, she was just irate that I get off her bike, and my bike, and then, maybe these people have had bad encounters with other cyclists, which it's true, it's possible, but I haven't seen anyone doing anything too crazy. All the immigrants are chill. For all the problems that mass immigration brings, the immigrants are chill with anything like that. They don't care if you bike on the sidewalk. They'll often do the same thing, but that works for me. But this lady was just not even just as you're coming out from the bridge. That's where I got it, and she wouldn't let me pass. So that's what drives me crazy. And I was just howling at her, and she was cussing at me. She kicked my bike, and then I wanted to kick her in response, but I held back. I didn't do it. I left before the situation escalated. But we were shouting at each other just on the spur of the moment. It was like I was relatively calm that day. Nothing had been feeding into that. All of a sudden, in this moment under the bridge, and you could just say, well, that's just life, that these things happen. Fine, that's true. But it's always interesting to think, what's going on? Because that hasn't been the only time that someone has done that to me in that bridge. And I bike all over the place. I'm constantly biking every other day. Like, I'm biking all over the city through all sorts of places. I've passed people in many, many, many different places. I've never had like such a localized phenomenon of people. I've almost never had people complain, but just this localized phenomenon here. I mean, obviously I live in the neighborhood, but and just today, I was coming down on the other side of the bridge, gliding down, like the people could see me. It was like a young man, young woman. They were maybe in their mid-20s for all I knew, white, and it's like very like physically, diminutive. Like, I'm not the biggest guy either, but I was taller than him, and I'm just 15 feet away from them, gliding by. I mean, we're gonna pass each other, like coming different directions. So there's no accident going to occur here. I'm going so slow. I came from the grocery store. Come on, I have some groceries here. I'm just peacefully passing by you in this dangerous underpass area. And then the guy's like, in a very effeminate voice. And by the way, this guy had turquoise hair, green hair, completely green, dyed gray, like pasty, scrawny guy. And I know I'm not the strongest guy, but like this guy was not like, did not physically intimidate me at all. And I'm not going to go around like, but he actually like jumped out in front of my bike. Like, no, on the road, get on the road, like right in my face just today. And I was just like stunned by that, and just within a second, like enraged, like I was infuriated, and I stopped the bike, and I punched him right in the chest as hard as I could. I just punched him right here in the chest, and I was wearing like my winter gloves, which are thick, even though it's the first day of spring today. It's Canada, so I was wearing my winter gloves, and he had his jacket on, so. I don't think I did too much damage to him, unfortunately, but he did move back a bit. Me punching him, he moved like 5 inches. Like it forced him back like half a foot, and he stood there he was very surprised that I had done that, and he didn't make a move. So I was like, I'll knock your fucking teeth out, you SJW. And I was like, I had so much saliva in my mouth I couldn't formulate words correctly because I was so stunned that he would just jump out at me at the last minute and do that. And then just like be right in my face being a complete asshole. I mean, it's all because of the entitlement thing. But anyways, I didn't mean to go off on this tangent because that's kind of a separate story. But why did he get that attitude under this bridge? I mean, again, you could just say, oh, it's the bridge. It's the design of the bridge. It's like, yeah, to an extent, there's natural factors going on here, but it is odd. It's kind of a rare phenomenon to really get people, not just like, people can make remarks here and there, yeah, get on the sidewalk, buddy, or get on the road, buddy, but nothing like these people who are possessed to literally make you stop, like get off your bike, and then so they can just like tear into you. Like that, I'm not trying to make a stretch in saying that that's demonic possession, but what can happen is if there's a troll spirit, if there's an evil spirit lurking under that bridge, it's starting to make sense to me that the evil spirit can actually kind of, I don't know if it's like full possession, but he can influence people to get malicious all of a sudden at the spur of the moment, to get angry all of a sudden at the spur of the moment. This sort of negative energy can infect people in a certain place at a certain time when they pass through, maybe not at a certain time, but in a general locality. And it infected me in that moment. It was already infecting those people as they walked under the bridge before they met me. This thing was like there in their mind, but I mean, it's not fully there. It's not like a full possession. It's whispering things in your unconscious ear. It's sort of, behind your shoulders, pushing you a little, maybe resting on you. I don't know. I don't mean to make this too much of a physical thing, because these things are not physical like we would think. And John Rasmus has talked about how when he spent time at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles, over 3 consecutive nights he went there. And there's supposed to be a long history of weird stuff at the Comedy Store going on there. So he went there for the gigs. He watched the stand-up routines, and they got to know him because he was there. And John Rasmus was sort of picked on by some of the people at the Comedy Store. They were kind of being rude. But he also interpreted it as the people could be nice to him and then all of a sudden change. And it was this weird thing he noticed, that it was something to do with the Comedy Store. People who might be acting a certain way, that all of a sudden a demon can just make someone be really malicious and start tearing into you all of a sudden. Like, oh, this guy was like kind of friendly the other night. Now, what happened to him now? And then again, I know you can dismiss this and say, oh, well, you're just describing life. You're just describing common circumstances. And yes, I am. But we all can see sometimes, maybe not all of us, but there's a weird dimension. And I'm not trying to get into all this new agey stuff like synchronicity. I've sort of left all that stuff behind. It's important to look at this through a Christian worldview, in the sense that there's demons, there is a God, there's good and evil. So don't go too far into the new agey sort of stuff with this. I don't want to be feeding like a fascination in demons. That's not good to feed that. We want to feed a positive, like the notion of following God's teachings, because people love demons. Oh, they love that idea. They want to just focus on that and the sensationalism of it all. And that's not a good path to follow, but at the same time, you can acknowledge that there really are invisible spirits walking around. Why is hundreds and hundreds of years of human history suddenly now fallacious? And now we have the truth. Now we have materialism and evolution and natural scientism. We have all of that today. And the other thing, tying in with John Rasmus, I was bouncing this idea off of him. I'm interested in the question of, people who claim to be schizophrenic, or people who claim to have these mental conditions where they repeatedly, supposedly hallucinate. And my question is, are the schizophrenics actually hallucinating? Because I've watched interviews of schizophrenic people, and I mean, a lot of these people, you could say, oh yeah, maybe they just have a mental condition. They're not really perceiving anything. And I mean, there are obviously odd people in how they act. However, I mean, I've been taken aback listening to interviews of some schizophrenic people, and I mean, in the interview, they're being contacted. They're talking to me right now, and these entities, they describe what they're saying. What they describe is just really, really disturbing kids, like a really disturbing bully at a high school wanting, you better just kill yourself, or you better, you should do this, you do something terrible, like that'll never work, or just always trying to tear into you. And yeah, there's benefit to saying, oh, it's mental condition, and he's projecting, and you're imagining it. Yeah, maybe that's going on in a lot of cases, but I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not open to the possibility that maybe, like throughout history, this would just be explained as another form of demonic attacks and or demonic possession, one or the other, to some extent or another. And of course, it is a spiritual battle, and I pray for people who suffer from a schizophrenic condition, that they can let the demons leave them alone. Let us pray to God that he helps cleanse all of us from demonic activity. But when it comes to the idea of the schizophrenic thing, I mean, when I'm referring to this being normal throughout history, with Christianity or before Christianity, like if you look at the Assyrians, John Rasmus told me about this article. The article is describing a 2,700-year-old Assyrian clay tablet. You know how they had the cuneiform writing, they had all these clay tablets of records mostly, but other things like writings and documents. And this was describing a medical professional's prescriptions for dealing with what we would now call epilepsy, which they called Bennu. And there was a drawing of a demon on the other side of this clay tablet that no one had recognized for a long time. It's kind of like horizontally. If you flip it vertically, you see that it's kind of, I mean, it's badly damaged, but there is a figure of a semi-animal humanoid with an animal head sort of figure with a snake-like tongue. And this was the creature who the medical practitioner from ancient Assyria, who they believed was causing the epilepsy on behalf of a moon god. I thought that was, I mean, the article didn't say very much, but it was interesting that the demon was working on behalf of the moon god. You know, in the world of the demons, they have their different hierarchy too. Hasta luego, amigos.